Gentlemen, it is 2:30. We're waiting for the electronics to turn on. Okay. It's 2:30 and a quorum of the board is present. So the meeting will please come to order. Let me say at the outset that Nancy Jasek, who is the secretary of the board, has been having some health issues, and she's unable to attend today due to a doctor's meeting. Both David Naiman and Graciela Rivera-Oven are en route, so they will be attending shortly, I'm sure. The first order of business is public comment. And I know that we have a number of people, which I'm delighted, always glad to see a full house here. And I know that Margie has given you all the instructions for how this is handled. It is a 3-minute limit. If you have a written statement and have reproduced it, we'll distribute it to the board members. If you only have one copy of it, we'll see that it's distributed afterwards to everybody. And we're going to hold you to the 3 minutes because we've got a full agenda here, and we need to move through it, hopefully while there's daylight. So with that, Margie, please.
The first person is Josephine Wang. If you would come up to the table.
Where do you want me to
Come up to the table.
Yes, please.
I have prepared copies.
Okay.
I must apologize, Peter. I think I got your name a little mixed up. It's Montgomery. I crossed it out.
Ms. Wang, you can have a seat here.
There's my personal safe there.
And there's one for you.
Okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Josephine Wang. I'm from China, actually. I'm a naturalized citizen, so I take citizenship very seriously. Okay? So, I'm here today to give you a few observations I have. I have to say, thank you for the opportunity for me to speak. I was at the early voting site at Borough Park for 8 days. Actually, 7.5 days. The reason I say 7.5 days was because, I'll come to that when I get to it. So basically, it was from October 23rd through October 30th, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. I was a poll watcher. Okay, so I was instructed to get there at the site before 10 o'clock, which I dutifully did. So, and I was supposed to take some numbers from each machine, but when I got there, I handed in the document. Oh, I have an extra copy. Somebody. I handed in my document to the chief judge, and then I wanted to take the numbers. That I was immediately met with very unfriendly, kind of not friendly attitude. So, well, you're not allowed to do this. Well, wait a minute. I said I was here to, I was instructed to do this. I said, where does it say that I'm not allowed to do this? So I did object to this. So, at this point, I guess the chief judge didn't know what to do, so okay, you can look at it. So from each machine, I took the numbers. I was able to do this. But throughout the day, I wasn't there. I went back in the evening to take the evening numbers. So I reported to my supervisor. And the next day, which is, I think Ms. Marjorie or Margaret Jorgensen came. I don't know. I got your names mixed up. So, and then you spoke with me saying the law, which did not allow me to take the numbers from each machine. So I said, well, but I see a discrepancy. So I was being lectured on. I'm very unfriendly, stone-faced. Here I'm a new citizen. I'm not new, but I would like to make a difference. It didn't say where I could not take the numbers from each machine. So afterwards, after I talked to her, I was able to, the next day, which was the third day, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, I was able to do my morning routine and evening routine, I was able to do it. And most of the time, I tried not to be in the way, so the chief judges or the judges were friendly. Every day they had a different chief judge. However, during the last day, the 8th day in the evening, everyone was trying to do the closing. I said, well, I should really not be in the way. Let me do this now. And do
you're
it
at 3
quickly.
minutes,
Okay.
so wrap
But
up,
anyway, I
please.
was told not to. So there's a discrepancy. My recommendation is to have better communication, better training for the judges, and be friendly to the volunteers, such as myself. I'm Josephine Wang. I love to do volunteer work. I didn't get paid, or it's just a learning lesson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josephine, and I certainly agree. We try to respect,
Thank you.
everyone that we see at the polling places. Does anyone have any questions of Josephine? Okay. Thank you.
Next person is Robin Sachs.
Hello. I was going to say, here are my handouts if you want to go that way. So, good afternoon, all of you. And I had the pleasure of walking in with
You might want to
Marianne.
sit down because
Sure.
we're
Okay.
taping.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
taping. Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. During the actual election, during early voting, and around the election, I was getting 5 to 10 calls or emails per day. So I almost feel like I work with the Board of Elections already. My name's Robin Sachs. I'm president of the Maryland Voter Alliance, and we are an election integrity group committed to the integrity of our election process, making sure that every legitimate vote counts, which I'm sure everyone at this table shares that desire with me. I saw that the Montgomery Gazette had an article that was you guys were seeking an audit of the registration process. So that's really why I'm here. In addition to what was mentioned in the Gazette article, which I think was Kate Alexander, my group had 3 classes of complaints during the election. Probably the most concerning to me were reports of non-citizen voting. The second class was voting machines, I'll call it voting machines behaving badly, because this was the calibration issue, which I'm sure you all know. I'm not going to go into that. And the other thing which was very concerning was registrations that were showing up for people who had moved away like 5 years ago or were dead. The quote at the bottom here from Jose Flores was someone, and I won't read it, but he was basically saying people were bragging on Facebook about voting in our election here in Maryland, and they were non-citizens. So this email from him is a quote, unquote. This is exactly what he said. I just cut and pasted it. The next email from Garth Phoebus was him saying, my wife is not a citizen. She just got a mailer from the Maryland Board of Elections to tell her to go ahead online and register to vote, and she's not eligible to vote. So this is his verbatim comment. And I'm sure you've probably heard about the Virginia Voter Alliance, the lawsuit that they filed in Frederick County. My group took a small portion of that, 120 out of 1,200, and I have submitted this to the Maryland Board of Elections, but we basically, out of 120, had about 22 that seem to be on the active voter rolls. So what is happening, and there's a Washington Post article here, and behind that is an article from the Frederick News Post. But basically what they're saying is that the only way we're taking non-citizens off the rolls, if they get on the rolls because of the MVA, is through jury cross-checks. So I actually asked the Assistant Attorney General, Jeff Darcy. Well, I've only been called for jury duty twice
You're way over.
in 25 years. So
wrap up.
what about the 90% who are not called for jury duty? anyway, this is a big concern. I'm sure you share this concern with me. And I think we need to do a better job besides just jury cross-checks to keep non-citizens off of our active voting rolls.
If I may, the quotes that you raised are speaking, they don't indicate it's Montgomery County.
These are Montgomery County. I can get you the,
I
if
mean,
you
it-
want me to like
it says-
forward you the actual email.
It's just referring to Maryland. I'm glad
Right.
that you have brought this before
Right.
the state because, of course, there is a process in
Yes.
place. It is very lengthy, the length of time it takes to remove somebody
Right.
from the rolls. Because obviously it's very sacred, if you will, to assure that somebody who should remain on the
Sure.
rolls does.
Absolutely.
And so you may say, oh my gosh, it's been 4 years or something, but
Right.
in fact, it's a very defined process as to how many federal elections somebody is missing
Right.
before they're removed.
Right.
And the state, can certainly address that. But thank you, and yes,
Can I ask
we'll-
you one more quick question about the inactive, or what seem to be inactive registrations in Montgomery County? So with the new law that was just passed to recouple the what Maryland's going to do with the Social Security Death Index, do you have any idea of when that will happen?
No,
Okay.
no, we really don't.
Okay.
May I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
Thank you for your testimony. You quote from someone who's talking about Maryland, and then you also have the Virginia Voter Alliance.
Right.
Now, is that Frederick County, Maryland, or is that in
Yes.
Virginia?
Frederick County, Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as Mary Ann said, it doesn't seem to be, there may be issues in Montgomery County. We don't deny that there are issues in Montgomery County, but it doesn't seem that what you've given to us today is issues about non-citizens voting in Montgomery.
I am so sure that if we found 10% out of a 1,200 sample, because we could actually get the FOIA data from the jury commissioner to cross-check it, which we could not get from Montgomery County, they rejected our
Okay, well,
request.
I wasn't asking about what you're sure of. I'm asking
Right.
about what you have evidence of. And it sounds like, if I understood correctly,
Right.
that you have something that you think shows it in Frederick County, and of course, I don't know enough about Frederick County to know if that's the case.
Right.
And we have a statement from someone in the state of Maryland, but
Right.
we don't have any specifics. I mean, if there's specifics about
I
Montgomery
could
County.
probably get you specifics. I have a lot of data. I have like this much.
Well, if we have specifics, we'd be interested to hear
Okay.
it. But at the moment, it doesn't sound like you have that.
Well, I would think that this would be a huge concern to you if non-citizens are getting on the rolls and they're bragging about the fact that they're getting licenses as non-citizens at the MVA. So,
Well,
I
no,
mean,
no, it is a huge concern
Right.
if non-citizens are on the rolls. That's why I'm asking you if you have
Right.
specific information about it in Montgomery County, which
Yeah.
is where we have jurisdiction.
Which,
Right.
please do.
If you tell me
because
where
if
to
if you
send that.
stay right here to the board.
To you?
If you
to
stay for
email
the
that
rest
too.
of the meeting,
Yeah.
we're going to be
Okay.
discussing the audit and what that's transposing. Thank you, Robin.
Okay, the next person is Lewis Porter.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Hello.
I have 12 copies here. Okay. First of all, I'm going to start with you're not separate from the state rules and regulations. Part of the problem. You've created a sieve that needs to be addressed. So I'm going to start with members of the board. I'm Lewis Porter, and I have been a long Montgomery County citizen. I come to you today with concerns that I have from serving as a poll watcher in Baltimore City. I know that it's not your jurisdiction, but my questions are generic to the voting process, so I thought I would begin with you. On election day, I went to one of the polling places in the city and was then redirected by the Hogan campaign to go to a different polling place. The first polling place I went to, I found a judge, and she told me I was a poll watcher, and she welcomed me and said, "Have a seat." That was not the case in the second one, where the judge told us we had to watch from the hallway. We had to sit in front of the door in order to see in, but we could not hear well. Actually, it was double doors, and we asked if we could open the second door. She responded that she would not open it. Later in the day, she complained that our one chair was in her way, so she asked us to move. If we moved, our observer would not have been able to see the voting machines, so we did not move. We were in an assisted living home and had already been moving when necessary to allow voters to use the use of the one single door. One of us had been a poll judge before, so we counted heads that were voting at the machines. There were a number of people milling about. That's very significant. There were a number of people milling about, coming in and out of that room, and they were there for a while. Our watcher said he believed one person came in and had voted 3 times. I looked in to confirm, but although I had seen her in the room, I could not testify to that happenstake, but he would swear by it. There were other problems, but the last main one of note was at the end of the day when a man came in and started taking numbers off the machine and directing the breakdown of equipment. We asked the judge, who is this man? What is he doing with the machines, and could we get his name? And she, the judge, said no. Now my question to you is to the process. I'm a citizen here in Montgomery County. I've not gone to the other states to do this, but I have the right to do it. So I'm asking my county to give me, my question now is, my question for you is how, as a poll watcher, are we supposed to register a problem of note in real time, and who should we call on when we have real concerns right there in the poll? And I feel, as a citizen, I have equal standings with the poll judge or anyone else. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Of course, as you recognized from the beginning, this did happen in Baltimore City. I would presume that the campaign that you were assisting would probably be your point of contact to say that there was an issue in the polling place where you were, and most campaigns that I'm aware of have attorneys and whatnot, or you can call the Baltimore City Board of Elections. Certainly, I think you should bring the issue before the state board. Go online and find out when their next board meeting is. They generally meet monthly at the end of the month. And, I hope this is not something that happened in Montgomery County. We've not heard of, a particular issue like this. But yes, there certainly are places you can go in real time to get it addressed. And
okay, then excuse me, and I'll get up and I'm leaving. But we did call the Hogan campaign, and they said that they weren't going to take issue with this. So we just sat through the day and did the best job we could. I'm saying that I have standing as a citizen, as a poll watcher, and there is no process for this. That's what I'm here about. So thank you.
thank you, Louis, for coming.
The next person is Linda Del Castillo.
I'm here.
Okay.
Somehow I read bring 8 copies.
Oh, no, I had said 12.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Well,
okay.
We'll share.
we'll save 3 this way, right?
Sure,
I'll just
save
pass
some
them this
trees.
way. That's right. Thanks. It's in big print too, so you can look over 3 people probably and read it. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Linda Del Castillo. I've lived in Bethesda for more than 30 years. This is my second time to publicly offer my opinion in all these years that I've been living in Bethesda, but the topic is the same. In July of this year, I became aware through a chance email I received that the County Council was reviewing the suggestion made by its Fair Vote Task Force. One of the task force recommendations was to allow non-U.S. citizens to vote in county elections. I spoke then that I disagreed and argued that it violated Maryland state law. Just before the recent November election of this year, I read about a lawsuit filed in Frederick County, Maryland, alleging that massive and fraudulent voting by non-U.S. citizens was occurring in the county. The group contends that such illegal voting has been going on for years because jury duty and voter registrations did not match for many people. I consider this a serious problem, and upon some independent research of my own, have become very disturbed to learn that due to the voter laws, it seems very easy to register to vote without the need to prove one's U.S. citizenship. I found a quote attributed to Maryland State Board of Elections Administrator Linda Lamone stating the following on the subject of verifying required U.S. citizenship. Quote, "There's no way of checking. We have no way of doing that. We have no access to any information about who is in the United States legally or otherwise." That's all her quote. So it seems to me this situation's been going on for some time now. And the issue here is not whether or not an applicant is here legally or not. The issue is whether the applicant is a U.S. citizen. There are many applicants for Maryland driver's licenses who might be here legally, but are not U.S. citizens, and therefore they're not eligible to register to vote. Legal residency is not enough. One must be a U.S. citizen in order to vote. My reading has also revealed another disturbing fact, that federal agencies don't always assist in clearing up records and confirming the citizenship of applicants, resulting in state election officials relying almost entirely on the honor system to keep non-citizens from the polls. For some non-citizens, getting a voter registration card easily obtained by just checking the box at the MBA office also opens the door to getting many federal government benefits, which should only be received by U.S. citizens. The voter registration ID can be a critical pathway to then identifying oneself as a U.S. citizen in a lot of other cases. The accuracy and integrity of voter registrations is critically important to honest and fair voting, ensuring we have a system people believe in. I would like to hear from the Board of Elections to learn of how the county and the state of Maryland can devise a way to ensure that voter registration applicants at the MVA are in fact U.S. citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I mean, I have to say, I was at a poll for 13 hours at one place. I got to know everybody manning the tables, no matter what party, unions, Democrats, everybody, Board of Education, judges. We all spent 13 hours. People were joking about how easy it is to vote in Maryland. It was funny, but it was sad. It was like people, I live in California. Oh, you can go vote. They don't check ID. I mean, it's not good. It's not good at all, because when people don't believe that their vote counts and it's getting diluted by people who are not supposed to be voting, that's another reason why voter participation goes down of the real voters, because they figure, what's the point? People who are voting aren't even supposed to be voting. So I would
it's a situation I recommend that you go to the state board and express your concerns there. As you know, we are a satellite, if you will, of the state board. It's state policy that we, as a county board, implement. But obviously, we take these issues very seriously, and the audit that we are going to have conducted looking into Department of Motor Vehicles and the registration process will obviously be looking into all those type of issues. Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
I guess I appreciate that answer, but I've heard a couple of times the response of, well, we're the county. It's sort of like, okay, so can't the county do something better and different than what minimal coverage the state's doing? You're not allowed to?
That's correct.
Well,
It's
can't
state policy. Please take this further to the state. We have a lot of people to hear today. Thank you.
I don't know why
Linda.
why you all representing the citizens in the county can't do something more.
We are. We're having conducting an audit.
I mean, the average citizen can't get all the research that needed to be done.
Gary Featheringham.
I have a dozen copies of testimony.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes,
Okay.
please do.
My name is Gary Featheringham, resident of Montgomery County for 27 years. I first want to thank Montgomery County Board of Elections for permitting me to speak today. I wish to speak about my experiences at the early voting in Germantown in October for actually all 8 days, and the election day at precinct 06008 of Legislative District 15 in North Potomac. In addition to greeting voters outside as they approach the voting site for the Republican Party, I was also designated as a challenger/watcher at those poll sites. The Republican Party of Montgomery County requested that I observe some of the activities at the site, of which I did. I also was suggested to observe the voting process as a member and the deputy chair of the Montgomery County Council Right to Vote Task Force. So I was in both capacities there. Now there are multiple issues which I that I could address at this time, especially like the previous participants were talking about difficulties at poll watching process, and I had difficulties specifically with Margaret here, but because time is permitted, I will focus on the most important issue. My concern was that I wish to bring forward is the multiple occurrences of people having their votes switched from a Republican vote to a Democrat vote. I personally had 2 people from the general election and 1 from early voting come to me and indicate that their votes were flipped. I heard that that there were quite a few throughout the county. I would like to ask Montgomery County Board of Elections just how many similar complaints were registered and what is being done about it. The voters whom I spoke said judges were responsive, but the judges indicated that nothing was wrong with the machines and the flipping were voter errors. I asked several people working at the site about the issues and was told that voters with long fingernails accidentally selected the wrong candidate listed above when they were touching the touchscreen. This was dubbed a calibration issue. It should be noted, and you can do that on your own cell phone, that a fingernail cannot activate a touch screen. It's only the fingertip. So a fingernail can't make that kind of a jump in voting. As of October 28th, the Maryland State Board of Elections announced that they received reports of about 20 voting units allegations that displayed candidates different than what the voters selected. How many more reported since then and during the general election is a question to you. How many votes were cast on those defunct machines? Were any machines taken offline? How many Democrat votes were switched to Republican or to other parties? I did not hear of any such switches in opposite direction. Isn't it odd that only Republican votes were flipped? On November 10th, it was announced that the Montgomery County Board of Elections plans to seek an independent audit of voter registrations handled by the MBA, which we just were talking about. You know, after reports were talking about voters' registrations being changed. I believe Montgomery County Board of Elections should do the same for the vote flipping and conduct an independent audit of vote flipping during the early and general voting of this year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We certainly are aware of the issue and calls that came in. During early voting, we had staff and board members went to the areas and machines were rechecked, et cetera, et cetera. From all that we could tell, it was an issue of fingers somehow touching something wrong or whatever. But anyone who felt that they had an issue certainly, you know, would call over. As best we know, in some cases there were people that felt that their machine somehow didn't go through the way they wanted. They then voted a provisional ballot, and we, as best we could, determine whether, you know, their vote on the machine had in fact gone through from reports that we got from poll judges versus the provisional, so that, you know, we weren't counting 2 ballots, but there were issues where we recognized the provisional ballot where someone's vote apparently had not gone through on the machine. So the good news is we're not using those machines again.
I understand that.
And we have a whole new process coming next year, or next election. You know, we are aware of the situation. We attempted to deal with it as best we could and as fairly as we could. And people that did make it known while they were still at their voting booth were able to have it taken care of. Any comments or questions from board members?
No. Well, I guess in response, you basically stated exactly what I said.
Yeah.
My question is, you going to do anything about it, or just say, well, wait for the new machines? I suggest an independent audit, taking a look at those reactions. You know, one vote was one person was elected by 2,000. So,
We checked them as we were made aware of them. But thank you for that.
any splits between Republicans to Democrats, back the other way, Democrats to Republicans?
We don't
Don't
know.
That's what I mean. Independent audit would be sufficient. Thank you for your attention.
The next speaker is Daniel Gray.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Daniel Gray. I'm a member of the Bar of the State of Maryland going back to 1981. I'm a 15th generation Marylander. I only lived in the state for 6 months when I was studying for the bar exam 33 years ago, but I was the attorney who filed the suit in federal court that had to be withdrawn because of a jurisdictional question that has to be altered. But the evidence that I did find about non-citizens being on the voting rolls, I've studied it very carefully, and I'll be happy to testify at some future point to you all at length. I received phone calls from all over the state after I filed that suit. I'm just going to address Montgomery County issues, even though I know from speaking to Assistant Attorney General Bradley Neitzel that you all are a state agency. In effect, I am speaking to the state. I spoke to your best homicide prosecutor, John Maloney, who I've gotten to know really well because he convicted the murderer of a child, the murder of the son of the childhood friend of mine twice, and is now, because of the judges in Montgomery County, going to have to take him to trial for a third time. And John, when I told him about this, he said, I'm going to have to ask in every jury that I call, I'm going to ask a voir dire question, are you citizens? Because he said every defense attorney in the county is going to be seeking a new trial because there may have been non-citizens poisoning the jury pool. And if that happens and you have convicted felons released among you, you know who's going to be to blame? You all are. As a former prosecutor in inner city St. Louis, I know how hard it is to convict somebody beyond a reasonable doubt. And in Maryland, it's even harder to do it because when I was a prosecutor in St. Louis City, we got 6 preemptory strikes and the defense got 6. But in Maryland, the defense gets twice as many preemptory strikes, so you make it even harder to get a conviction, and you're going to make your nice suburban county a lot less safe if you don't really get aggressive about this audit. I'll also tell you about one other anecdote that somebody told me, which should really concern you all. A gentleman called me and told me that his father had died recently, and he went to vote in the June 25th primary in his county, and I'm not going to tell you where the county is, but Montgomery County was one of the counties where people called me up about irregularities. And he said he was told he went to vote, he had a valid voter card in his wallet, and his name was not on the poll book, his name was not on the electronic database. The people at his polling area in the suburbs said, so-and-so, you're going to have to go someplace else. You're going to have to go up to Glen Burnie and see if the state can help you out. So he goes up to Glen Burnie. He brings his voter card. He talks to a gentleman at the counter. The gentleman goes and notifies the supervisor. The supervisor came back and told him 10 minutes later, you know what, Mr. So-and-so? There is a marking on your driver's license with your voter ID computer fingerprint. He said somebody at a motor vehicle agency in another county took your voter identity and moved it onto the voter identity of an African man living in Hyattsville, and thus you're going to have to vote provisionally. So that's a felony, that's identity theft, it's going on in this county. There's 1 million people in this county. It is certainly going on. It is certain you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of non-citizens on the voting rolls. If nothing else, you make yourself a sanctuary county, so you're creating an incredible temptation. And I sure hope your audit is as good as you make it crack up to be, because what I've seen in the counties and the phone calls I got around the state, your state, and I've lived in 10 different states and voted in 5 different states, your state's in really, really bad shape, and you're the biggest county in population, so you all must be in bad shape too.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Keefe.
The next speaker is Hessie Harris. Ms. Harris, are you here? Okay. We'll move on to Gail Weiss.
Hi, Marianne and I met at the Seven Locks poll where I was working for a candidate. So I didn't bring copies because this is something that came from you all. This was the laminated sample ballot put out by the Board of Elections, missing a candidate's name. My question is, who put this out at Board of Elections? How did this get distributed to all of the precincts? And why did it take about 3 hours to get it pulled from all of the polling stations in 16?
I'll begin the discussion, and then I will turn to staff on this, because you and I did meet at the polling place. And in fact, when you pointed it out to me, which was the first I had seen it,
Right.
I went back into the polling place. While I was in there, the phone rang, the special phone that's set up for the polling place. I answered it, and it was the call coming in to please remove all of the sample ballots from that polling place because of the error that was contained in it. My understanding at the time, I then called back here to headquarters and was told that all of the precincts in District 16 were receiving the call and all were being told the same thing. So as soon as it was identified, it was aggressively handled as best we could to take the documents out of there. No question, it's an error. It was an error in the printing. And I'll ask Margaret to jump in here.
We identified the staff person who was responsible for making the error, and they will be dealt with in accordance to the Montgomery County personnel rules. It was proofed, and it got through both steps.
It was not proofed by the candidates, however, correct?
That's correct. It was not proved by the candidates.
And I know that the paper ballots are. Is this allowed to follow a different process than the paper ballots that are mailed out to all the citizens?
This is provided as an aid for the election judges to distribute. People come with sample ballots, the ones that we mail, and we also provide the paper sample ballots. But two things happen with those paper sample ballots. Number one, they get torn up and shredded, and these are simpler to read because they're reusable, and that's why we've developed this as an aid. We've been doing this since 2012.
The laminated ones?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Mary and I both, it might have been you, it might have been the chief judge at Seven Locks. We had never seen them before, the laminated ones,
They have been available since 2012.
for 2 years.
We had, the board did not see the finished product of this. So it, I mean, you're absolutely right. It didn't go through the usual review process that our other materials do. And, you know, clearly that was a problem. I mean, I think the board members here can tell you we go through endless checks and rechecks of material and bags and signage, et cetera, et cetera. I guess the feeling was that this was something that was going to be helpful and a last minute thing that was somehow reproduced, but yeah, last minute often isn't good. And I certainly, on behalf of the board, apologize for that. You know, we acted as quickly as we could to remove it, but
And will it be public information as to who the exact employee was? Because, I mean, this had to go through a process with a printer that something had to have been specifically done to remove a specific name that appeared on the paper ballots and mysteriously disappeared from this one that was in all of the polling places in 16.
We are looking into it at this time, and it will be dealt with in accordance to Montgomery personnel regs.
And according to those regs, is the public allowed to peek behind the curtain to know?
I can't answer that question.
You don't know? Who?
I don't know at this time.
Do you know what agency would know the answer to that question as to what the Montgomery County regs allow for the public to be aware of in something that affects the public so intimately?
I can check into it for you.
Okay. Is there some place that I can reach out to you so you
Yeah,
can?
I'll give you my phone number.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Next person on the list, Richard Fiddler.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
I'm Richard Fiddler, and I happen to be a closing judge. As I can reconnoiter here, I'm the only one who was actually involved in the process, legally, officially. And I must tell you
Thank
that
you for
the
your
closing
service.
Yeah.
process was terrible. We were about the last, no, not quite the last ones to come in here. We started closing down at 8 p.m. We never got up here until 12:30 a.m. Do you really want election judges, most, who are my age, out on the roads after midnight, coming up here in these dark roads? I think you need to rethink that. What I think you need to do is to rethink the whole closing process. When you get these new machines, go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Get some logistics experts in here to do it. You can't do it with people who don't have a real knowledge of logistics and the laws. I'll give you an example of some of the crazy things that go on. We were leafleting cars. I was a part of a campaign too, strictly legal. We went around public parking lots putting in our candidates' information on the cars. So then the campaign manager gets a call from, I think it was the Department of Permit and Licensing, I think it was, that said, you are not, he got a call and they sent him a letter. And it said, you are not allowed to do this. You are not allowed to put leaflets, lit drop, on cars or vehicles in a public parking lot, county-owned public parking lot. On one side was the letter, on the other side was the law. And the law said handbills and so on should be unlawful and so on. You can't do it. Not apply to distribution in or upon stationary vehicle of religious or political handbills. So it's illegal. And yet, that was on the same side of the letter that said it was illegal. Why do we have this stuff? Anyway, I have a whole lot of suggestions I'm going to be sending to you in writing. And whether I'll be a closing judge again, I don't know. If it's going to be like it has been the last 2 times, I'm going to skip it.
Thank you, Richard, and yeah, we're obviously concerned with the length of time of the closing and the late hours here, and it's going to be something. Several of us have had conversations with staff about what we might be able to do to accommodate it easier. So
Do all the counties follow the same procedure since it's all-
basically yes, but there are a couple of tweaks that are different places, but you know, we're looking into it.
So all closing judges were given this throughout the state?
I don't know what that.
It's a closing judge workbook with checklists and job guides.
Well, does that come from
That
the
comes
state?
from, it's an excerpt from the state manual.
From the
That is
state
correct.
manual. Yeah, I mean, you know, all of our regulations
Yeah.
have to follow state. We have very little leeway of tweaking things
Yeah.
within it, but
That's what I
we're
think.
looking into, because as you raised the point, we're the largest, you know, voting
Yeah, and I think the
jurisdiction.
state needs to get more heavily involved because this needs to be straightened out.
David has a comment.
Yes.
First off, thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell us about what time it was when you finished at your polling place? I'm trying to get a sense as to how much of the problem is caused by having to come here and wait in line up here.
Oh, right out here, taking the stuff out of the car, that's no problem at all. 5 minutes.
Right.
The only time I ever had a problem with it was my very first election in February of 2000. 2008. Remember the famous ice storm? Okay. My very first one, I thought, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? But anyway, that was the one where there was a problem. There was a line about 45 minutes long. But ever since then, the process here is pretty good.
So the issue is that you're at your polling
At
place?
the polling place.
And you're there past 11:30?
Yes.
Sounds like?
Now,
Yeah.
as a closing judge, that's not too bad because remember, the operations judge and the chief judges have been there since 6:30 a.m.
Right, right.
And they,
Oh, no,
most of them
yeah,
had to
yeah.
hang around until we finished.
We
So you had
understand
people there,
Right,
18 hours.
right. Oh, no, we definitely understand
So,
that.
Mr.
Yeah.
Fiddler, what time did you leave your precinct?
I left there a little after midnight, something like 12:15, 12:30.
And what part of the county is this?
I was in Bethesda at the Walt Whitman, 723
So
precinct.
by the time you got here,
I got here,
it must have been past midnight.
yes,
Close to
oh
1
yeah, it was
o'clock.
around 12:30 or later, yeah. And usually there's a police car down here at the bottom of the hill with the lights on. Wasn't there.
We
It
sure
came up
would.
this road here, this steep road, and usually there's lights all over the place. No, all the lights were off, except for when you got right up here at the top. So,
And did you see other cars?
there was 1 or 2 cars ahead of us. So I think we were basically one of the causes of this thing being reported so late to the state. So I will be sending details of my experience to the board later on.
Thank you.
Please do, thank you.
Is Tansy Stratford here?
Hello?
I have 12 copies here, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you for holding this important hearing. My name is Tansy Stratford. I'm testifying to express major concerns about the integrity of the voter registration and voting process in Maryland. Full participation of all eligible voters should be the goal of every election. Fair voting rules that are enforced are necessary to create and sustain a democratic society. Over the past several years, the state of Maryland was focused on making the voter registration process a lot easier, but has removed many safeguards that would ensure the registration was limited to only eligible voters. Frederick County, Maryland recently discovered that non-citizens are registered to vote. Moreover, some of the non-citizens have already participated in the voting process. In addition, I personally met a stranger who told me he was a non-citizen residing in Kensington, Maryland, Montgomery County, but voted in past primaries. He spoke Russian as well. The current practices of voter registration do not ensure the eligibility of a voter. For example, first, registration to vote with only driver's license does not allow to verification of U.S. citizenship. Second, registration to vote with the last 4 digits of a social security number does not allow verification of U.S. citizenship either. And apparently, Maryland has been registering to vote with no documents. They simply put or confirm that the applicant does not have any of those 2 items of identification. How can someone verify that someone doesn't have something? You cannot prove negative. It's already negative. There are voters that Board of Election is aware of who are inactive, and yet they're on the active voter roll. For example, for the upcoming election, I received the current sample ballot in the mail for someone who doesn't live at my residence. I have been living at my current address for the past 4 years and have never gotten any piece of mail for this person besides before the sample ballot. Unfortunately, those cases are not isolated. When I served as a poll watcher at the Wheaton High School, Montgomery County, during the recently held election, other voters related the same experience of receiving sample ballots for voters that don't reside at their addresses, even after bringing the matter to the attention of a Board of Election. There are multiple reports by precinct chairs that dead people and the people that move are also on the voter roll. I have more concerns about the voting registration and process that I express in my written testimony, and thank you for allowing me to testify. And I express some of them, not all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We, again, as I had explained sort of briefly, people's names do appear on the rolls long past the time that they are at a particular address. If you simply write across it and that the person is no longer at that address, give it back to the mail carrier, put it in the mail box for him to or her to take back, it then comes here and they get removed in that way. Short of having some sort of notice from, you seeing this at an address, or the person notifying us directly, or a family member that the person's deceased or whatever, there is a period of time that they do remain on the rolls before it's taken off. But we do, recognize the issue and take it seriously. And
Well, according to many voters at Wheaton High School, and they did follow the direction. They did send back those sample ballots, but they still keep getting them. And I did, since it's confidential information, I did note, I made a report and what time the voters that complain about it, so I can just point it out the time and female or what hair, and so anyway. What they did say, some voters at that location told the election judges about getting sample ballots for years for people that don't reside at their addresses. They respond to direction by election judges to send the sample ballots back to Montgomery County Board of Election by saying that they already done it. And
well, that's what
they already but they still continue getting it. It doesn't matter.
We'll look into the process at our end, but I mean that's if it's officially comes back through the process, they should be removed. But thank you for raising it. Anybody
about
have
that
anything else?
non-citizen serving as
Is there
Anybody else?
anybody else?
Is Mrs. Harris here at this point? Okay, that's it.
Okay. Well, I certainly thank all of the citizens who came forward and participated. As I said, we take all of these issues very, very seriously. We are going to be reviewing the entirety of the election process, what worked, what didn't work, what we can do better. We hear from you, and we're going to hopefully learn a lot more when our audit takes place regarding the registration issue and some of the other issues that were raised here today. Moving forward, the next item on the agenda is, are there any changes?
Yes, Madam President, we will need an executive session.
Okay, yes, we have, there are 3 issues, budget, executive session minutes, and a personnel item that will be taken up in executive session following our open session meeting. Approval of the minutes from October 20th and November 4th board meetings. We'll take up the October 20th minutes first. Did anyone have any changes or additions, etc.? Okay, is there a motion to?
I move we accept the minute.
All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? The November 4th minutes, this was the brief meeting that the board held on Election Day. I believe we received the minutes just recently, yesterday. If everyone's had time, they were very brief. Are we ready to move forward with approval?
I move we accept the minute.
Second.
November 4th.
All those in favor of accepting minutes from November 4th signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you. The election director status report is next. Margaret?
First, the budget. I'm gonna let Margie address that.
Okay, in your advanced packet, you received the update on the FY15 operating budget, showing expenditures to date, about a third of the way, give or take, through the budget. This is through, what the spreadsheet you have is through October 31st. It does not show the personnel costs for early voting because that ended, that pay cycle ended after October 31st. And so you'll see a significant change with the next update. Should show all of the overtime, et cetera, that was required for the election. I'll be happy to answer any questions any of you might have on anything specific here.
So you're saying there's a lot
Coming in.
lot coming in.
There'll be a nice change for next month, let's put it that way.
Okay. I don't think anyone have any questions on that? Okay.
The other thing I just want to mention, the board had requested it last month. I did put together a spreadsheet showing the surplus or deficit of our budget from FY11 through FY14. In light of the election and the canvass process, I've not had a chance to really go through and analyze anything, but the data is there for you. If you have any questions or need anything else on that, please let me know and I'll be happy to try to get that for you.
Could we put it on a future agenda?
The spreadsheet. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea because we've all been so,
Yes.
overwhelmed the past months and weeks with the election work. Can we, since we are planning to have a meeting in December, I think that might be a good time to look into this while it's still fresh, but we'll have enough time to really focus.
Okay,
If you can do that, please.
sure.
Okay. Anything else on budget?
Nothing from me.
Voter registration. In conjunction with the certification of the election, which we expect certification documents to be signed today, we have submitted all of our testing documentation as required prior to the election. Polling place evaluations have been completed and are in the process or may have already been forwarded to the state. The equipment has all been returned and accounted for. The precinct audit is expected to be completed by close of business and transmitted to the state by tomorrow. Absentee and provisional audit has been completed. I still have to do my review and the sheriff do a quality control check. Absentee is in the process of completing their audit, and Allison will be doing a quality control check, and that must be submitted to the state by tomorrow. Provisional data has been completed. Absentee data review has been completed. Registrations will, upon conclusion of the election certification, MD voters will reopen and registrations will be processed beginning this week, starting with the provisional voters and then moving forward with the backlog. Once we get the backlog of voter registrations completed, then we will begin the confirmation mailing, inactivating voters, or the process of adding to the confirmation mailing. It is expected that in late January, first part of February 2015, the state board will then go in and do their cancellation of voters.
In terms of the provisional voters who that information is now going to create a registration for them.
That's correct.
What type of notice do they receive that this is being done?
They'll receive a voter notification card, just as every other voter would.
Does it indicate that it was through their provisional vote?
No. No, because the form that they filled out says this is a voter registration application that they're completing.
In other words, the provisional ballot application will say if you're not registered to vote, this serves as your voter registration application.
Then does it come back to you? Is it in an envelope or is it a postcard?
It's a trifold.
Then, is it a trifold such that will be sent back to you if it's not the right address?
That is correct. It's sent first class mail. Exactly what it looks like.
I guess I'm wondering if, in all of these cases, these people's vote did not get counted because they were not registered.
Correct.
Should there be something in what they get?
They
that-
received it at the polling place. There was a cover sheet that was torn off and
But
provided.
they don't
to the
know
voters.
that their vote wasn't counted, I don't
It
think.
tells you exactly to call an 800 number, the state's 800 number, or they can go to the state website to verify whether or not their provisional ballot was tabulated. And if they disagree with the board's decision, they can appeal that board to the State Board of Elections.
I think that Mary Ann's talking about something a little more proactive, which would be everyone who gets one of these, who by definition didn't have their vote counted, could be told that they didn't have their vote counted and that now they were being registered to vote. It will probably lead to a bunch of people being unhappy, but those are the facts. So,
Well, it's sort of a good news, bad news, you know. The bad news is your vote was not counted because you were in fact not on the registration rolls at the time of the election. The good news is now you are, by virtue of having filled out the requisite information, a registered voter. I'm just wondering if we could maybe look at that notice that goes out in these situations and revise it to reflect that.
We can send a letter with the voter notification card.
this comes from us or from the
Yes,
state? It comes from us.
All right, can it be put on the trifold?
No, it'll have to be a separate letter. It'll have to be a letter inserted, English and Spanish, that says.
Is that it?
That
David,
is the
is that-
voter notification
That's a
form.
voter notification.
So, yeah, I was going to make a comment about it when we get to it, but my son received a voter notification card, and I think the only reason he received one, because as everyone on the board knows, he's been registered to vote for some time. It says his registration was updated, and I think that was only because he chose to vote absentee by going onto the state system to get it, to get the ballot emailed to him.
That's correct.
Because given the timing of this, I don't think it was a result. I haven't checked as to whether his ballot was counted, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't. By being on that system, it doesn't tell you that. It just says updated, registration updated. And I kind of went looking through it to see, is his party affiliation still the same? Is his address still the same? Et cetera. It all appears to be the same if I read it right. But he did get one just by virtue of having used the state system to request the absentee ballot online.
Madam President?
Yes.
In relation to what Mr. Naaman is discussing, the fact of the matter is that the online delivery of the absentee ballot requires the voter to fill out a new voter registration form, and then the page takes you to completing an absentee application. And during the election, and we received numerous complaints when people would click over to the online absentee form and it would direct them to the voter registration form, and they would call us and they were angry. They did not understand why they were being forced to register to vote again.
Sure.
And then, and we would explain to them that that was a state process, and if they did not choose to utilize that process, and they wanted well, first of all, we told them if you want an online ballot delivery, that was the process the state used. But if you didn't want to fill out a new registration, which some people don't, that there was another site to go to on our website that they could just fill out the absentee application that would allow them to still request an online ballot delivery.
That was
So-
on our website?
Yes, on our website.
Okay.
So, I
Good to
mean,
know.
there was a lot of confusion on the part of the voters with regards to this process. The state's thinking, according to one staff person, is that a lot of people request, their thinking is, suggests that there are people that request an absentee ballot that are not registered to vote, and this ensures them that they are registered when they request the absentee. So, both sides have merits to their discussion, but it was very confusing for a lot of voters.
And to take that one step further, you think they do it online because they know it gets them registered, and then they think they can vote because they do it that way in that election? I mean, to take your quote
Well,
one
if they're
step.
registering to vote and requesting an absentee ballot on or before October 14th for this election
Then they
cycle,
can?
then they are allowed to do that as long as they provide their driver's license and or last four digits of their social security number.
Do we have any information as to what percentage of the people who go through this process were not registered to vote? Because it sounds like we're making our registered voters go through a very lengthy process in order to address the issue of the people who aren't registered, which I'm guessing is going to be many fewer, especially in the time period after October 14th, which they allow people to register to request absentee ballots electronically until October 31st.
No, I don't know.
So, when they go on the state website to request an absentee ballot, right?
Or to our website.
Or to our website, and they're already registered voters, didn't you have to do that, right? Didn't you go through that process?
I did go.
Right?
I
And it was
didn't.
confusing?
It was confusing. I didn't know we
Right.
could go to our own website
Right.
for that. It was discussed
I
here.
guess what
missed
it
it.
makes no sense to me is the assumption of what the state's thinking. If you are, and if you put in your information, your date of birth and all that stuff, then it should match the records that the state has with that individual.
It's their process.
No, but I'm saying, doesn't, I'm asking you all, doesn't that make sense?
Well, I mean, there is so much with the various processes that needs fixing. You know,
Because then the assumption then is from the public that is on us.
it's
that
not
we're making
it's
the
not
process
user friendly
so
and
difficult.
yeah.
When this really is the state's process.
It is a state process to utilize the online online absentee delivery for the online absentee voter registration delivery system application.
Even Margaret gets confused.
We need to keep lists of these questions we have
Right.
that are automatically reverted back to the state,
Right.
so that we can at some point either get a
Yeah.
state person or in some other manner address them. My question also is, after October 14th, can't something be switched on the computer so that people?
It is switched. They will
It is
close
switched?
down the voter registration application.
All right.
Well, not on the state side.
Yes, on the state side.
Well, I can tell you that if you apply for an absentee ballot on that site, you still have to go on, give all your information. You still have to answer the question of where do you want your voter notification card sent. And as you might imagine, for my son, where the voter notification card was kind of a big deal, he said, "What? Why do they want to send me another voter notification card? I've already got one." And there was no question that he had to put in that information. He had to answer the question of, and he was trying to decide, well, do I send it to my school? Do I send it to my home? It was very confusing.
Some of these questions.
Yeah, I
Check so
would
we
like
can have
to,
a
I
finite
think,
list.
in terms of some of the issues we heard here today from citizens as well as this discussion, in addition to, the audit that hopefully we're going to be doing independently with an independent auditor, these issues fall outside of that. I think it's time to, I've gone to the state board meetings in the past, but I think this should be addressed in a presentation before the state board by us. And I'm sure.
I have no problems doing
And I think we
that.
need a finite list. Well, it won't be finite, but we need a
Yeah,
beginning
yeah.
list
Yes.
of our deep concerns with some explanation that we can hand them, and then
Well,
we can
and
ask
based
for
on
answers.
this most recent election process,
Yeah. Good.
we can pull it out.
We
from
only
it.
require driver's license or driver's license and social security. Do we require both of them?
No,
Just one.
one or the other.
Anybody can get driver's license. All the international students they had driver's license. How do we know who's citizen, who's not citizen?
Do you want to address that, Counselor?
Well, I will when we get into the audit.
All right.
Basically, when you fill out your voter registration application, at the very bottom of it, you're affirming under the penalties of perjury that you are a U.S. citizen, you're at least 16 years of age, you're a resident of the state of Maryland, and that you're therefore eligible to register to vote. That's the mechanism in place. If you were to fill out a paper voter registration application, when we get into the audit, that's one of the issues that is being raised is there should be some additional safeguards that are being put in place so that we have people know what the qualifications are to become a registered voter, and that they meet those qualifications, and that they're taking some affirmative act, namely signing, that the information is accurate and complete. Do you want me to discuss the audit now, or?
No, why don't we?
I'm almost I'm
but
almost done.
let me just bring some closure to my query about what we can send these folks that indicates that they are now on our registration rolls, but that their provisional ballot was in fact not counted. To me, it doesn't seem like we need a separate mailing if they're going to receive a notification regarding this, and there should be some way we can maybe attach something within
Well,
it,
it's only one sentence, Mary Ann.
or just put yes. I mean,
It's an although.
that's what I would think.
But we have underlined
Let's take a look at that before those go forward, if we may. Are you telling me they've gone forward?
Well, to process the actual provisional application so you could get it, yes, we had to process it and enter it into the system. So it's queued up, right, to be the very first things that are going to come out of that will come from the print shop to be printed. That's how come I'm saying.
I mean,
that
have
we
these
should
gone?
have-
Have these gone to print yet?
No, they have not gone. to
Well, then
print.
I think we can take care of it.
Okay.
How many we're talking about?
There's less than 1,000. Okay. Okay, so then we'll go on to the State Board of Elections. In your packet is the handout that is describing the expected system that the State Board of Elections have selected. The expectation is it will go before the December Board of Public Works meeting, and the generalized timeline is to receive the equipment in the state of Maryland approximately March of 2015. That will be just for acceptance testing, and I don't expect that distribution of equipment will occur for several months after that.
When is the next state board meeting? Do we know?
I think it's December 4th.
Thank you.
Was that the last one?
And aside from that, with the State Board of Elections, their focus obviously is on certification of election, this last election.
Okay.
And that's all, Madam President.
Board Attorney's report, Kevin?
Thank you. At the board's direction, I looked into what would be a mechanism to have an audit performed of the motor vehicle administration registration process. And there is a joint audit committee of our General Assembly. James Rosapep and Guy Gazone are the two, one's the Senate chair, one's the House chair. In essence, there are 10 senators and 10 House of Delegate members that serve on that committee, and there is a legislative audit branch, and Thomas Barnickel III is the legislative auditor. I've spoken to him. His office has oversight over budgetary issues, information systems audits, performance audits, and quality assurance and professional development. He has told me that the best way to have an audit performed is to send a letter to the two chairs of the Joint Audit Committee that can then direct his office to go ahead and undertake the audit. I was hopeful that I would have the draft letter to you all at the canvas, but I fell a little behind, and I had drafted the letter and I forwarded it to Mary Ann and to Margaret, and it will now go out to the entire board with some additional edits given the comments that were made here today. But there were really four issues that I felt were the core of the board's concerns. The first was the individuals who were registered voters in Montgomery County and had been registered, believed registered Democratic voters, who came in right after the primary saying that they had gone to the Motor Vehicle Administration and their party affiliation had been changed from Democrat to other parties. And that although we ultimately accepted their provisional ballots, given the fact that they were registered as with a political party, and for reasons that are not known to the board, their party affiliation was changed, that there needs to be something that's done to look into why that is occurring. And that the two gentlemen had expressed to Margaret and myself that when shown their voter registration application, they had never seen it before. And that the presumption was that the signature that was on the application was being taken from where you signed for your driver's license, because that's why the two gentlemen went to go to the Motor Vehicle Administration in the first place. And as we've talked about before, that is, of course, critical, because on that application, one of the things before you sign, in fact, right above where you sign, is that you are a U.S. citizen, you're 16, you are a resident of the state of Maryland, you're otherwise eligible to register to vote. And so that was the first thing that the letter basically says that we're proposing be reviewed, and what processes are currently in place to ensure that people are in fact being registered accurately. And that another issue is that we have individuals who are already registered to vote are claiming that they don't wish to be re-registered, and yet these individuals are being re-registered to vote. And so that is another issue that needs to be addressed. The second point was that we had a permanent resident come forward to one of our board members and indicate that through the Motor Vehicle Administration they had become a registered voter, but they are not a U.S. citizen. And that they actually were asking what would be the process to go ahead and have their registration canceled. And this, of course, then raises the issue again of the level of communication that is being conveyed to the individuals at Motor Vehicle at MVA regarding the qualifications, the necessary qualifications that one need to have to register to vote. And obviously, if their signature is being taken from just their their personal identification card and/or their driver's license, that would be a flawed process in our view. So that would be the second thing to look at. The third is the individual who claims that they registered to vote at the Motor Vehicle Administration, but according to the Motor Vehicle Administration's records, they're not registered, they declined to register, but the only thing that comes out of that whole process is a little printout that said, declined to register. That the voter is not having to take any affirmative steps when they decline to register to vote to say, I decline to register to vote, and that they're signing, and that we then have some documentation. So for this particular individual, we have someone who says they read to register to vote, but we don't really have anything that the person affirmatively declined to register to vote. So that's the third category of concern. And the fourth category is the individual who says that they filled out a paper voter registration application and dropped it off at the Motor Vehicle Administration. That is dropped off apparently in a box. The letter which you'll get raises the concern that there's no real chain of custody. In other words, that is taken, we have a staff member that goes from one location to another picking these up, but there's no real chain of custody of who actually dropped off their applications there, and who from our office picked them up and when they picked them up for processing. And that is something that we think should be clarified to enhance the process moving forward. So those were the four areas, obviously given the comment today about being a U.S. citizen and concerns about being eligible to vote and being a U.S. citizen. Obviously, I may tweak that letter a little bit to incorporate some of the public comment that during our most recent board meeting there was significant concern raised by members of the public on this particular issue moving forward. Those are the four areas that I have touched on, but I've sent it to Mary Ann and Margaret to say, I dictated this morning.
Yeah, I was going to say, it only came this morning. Don't think I've been sitting on it.
You guys are off the hook.
Yeah, very early this morning I dictated it, and it's so.
You're off the hook too.
Yeah,
we're working hard.
So, but I wanted to say, are we heading in the right direction? Is this where? And I think Mary Ann had some suggestions that I think we'll incorporate in turn, including Allison's experience she had at MBA. And that we have had publicity on this issue, and we would appreciate the audit committee moving as quickly as possible moving forward. But before I circulate it to the entire board, are there other issues that I have missed that should be included? Two hands are already
I
up.
saw David's first.
Yeah, although mine may relate to Jackie's. I thought that Jackie told us of at least one instance where it was a Republican voter who had their party affiliation changed either to Democrat or to other. And when you went through your list, you said that the two gentlemen, I had forgotten if I ever knew that they were both Democrats to other. But I was pretty sure that this was a bipartisan problem.
It absolutely
is.
is, and if you'll recall, during the primary election, when we were dealing with the issue in the provisional ballots, it was affecting both parties.
Yeah, that was mine.
That's an excellent point. I will add that part of it. That certainly should be included.
And please include in the letter that obviously for people who have been a longtime member of one political party and are then told that they have been moved, that's like telling them that you've changed their religion. I mean, it's a very serious thing. It's not just. It's not just a voter registration. To them, that is a very serious, as everyone at this table knows. I mean, that's a very serious thing.
I will certainly do so.
I think that we need to look at this jury duty list. My understanding always was, when they changed the process 30 years ago of picking juries, that it was changed to going to the voter registration list and then randomly picking people off the voter registration list to be on juries. If in fact there's been some problem with the jury list is purer than the voter list or vice versa, I think that we need to add that to the audit, that there needs to be some questions about the interfacing of the jury list and if that's the way they're doing it, and the voter registration list.
Jury list is a combination of we send our voter registration list approximately once or twice a year, and they combine it with the Montgomery County driver's list and to create their pool of voters.
With the driver's list, I wasn't told that. I'd always assumed it was, I didn't assume, I'd always heard that it was just the voter list that the juries are picked from.
No.
Because then they are getting illegals on the jury list.
I don't know about that, but I do know that the lists are combined.
Jack, I asked 2 questions in voir dire, and I don't do any criminal work, but I do in my civil cases. Are you a resident of whatever county it is? I don't practice this exclusively in Montgomery County, but whatever jurisdiction it is, are you a resident there and are you a U.S. citizen?
Can I say something?
I do ask.
And that's not always the case. In fact, I had another name for Margaret to check, and I have a gentleman who is a U.S. resident who has been trying for the last 8 years to get off the Judy list because he's a U.S. resident. He's going to become a U.S. citizen by the time they fix the issue, but so I just want to say for the record that as someone who was a U.S. resident and became a U.S. citizen, one of the biggest emphasis are when you become when you're a U.S. resident, because I know you said illegals, but I think we need to make note that there are millions of people who are U.S. residents who are here legally and doing and paying taxes and doing the right things. That one of the reasons this gentleman got probably on the list is because of MBA, but they're not on our voting rolls. But yet they're on the duty list. And for the last almost 8 years, he's been trying to get off the list, sending letters to the circuit court, going in person.
Have they been calling him for jury duty?
Every year. Every single year. He's trying, so he's doing the right thing. So I think the process, I mean, you can try to blame everybody, but I think there's a problem with the process, and we need to look at it that way. Because I think the other case that I had, where the gentleman did the right thing, where he was a registered voter, and he did not fill out an application to become a voter of Maryland, but we know that they take your signature, which to me is very worrisome that somebody can take your signature and paste it, just like you do in your computer. You can paste it to another page, and then it looks like that person has registered to vote without their knowledge. So I think we need to be aware that there are individuals who are not doing this in a malicious way or trying, but they're actually without their knowledge being registered to vote, being put on jury lists, and then they're going through the process because they know it's a federal offense that when you do apply for citizenship can have huge ramifications. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. With being able then to become a U.S. citizen, because it looks like you have tried to register to vote or you have tried to serve on a jury, when in fact what these folks are doing is saying, I never, I went to get my MBA ID or my MBA license, I never signed up to become a registered voter. So it worries me tremendously that the process is failing. And it's failing, I think, in the process of MBA. So I think we need to make emphasis.
I think that's one place.
That this is, but it's not just happening with the Board of Elections, it's happening in other areas as well. And people are very worried who, rightfully so. If you're a U.S. resident, one of the first things that they tell you is, you do not sign up to become a voter or you do not sign up to become a jury duty. But let me tell you, this poor gentleman for 8 years has been trying to do the right thing. So there needs to be a process in our system to be able then, when he goes in person, when he sends in the letter, to remove him from the list.
Absolutely.
Kevin, I think that we need to look carefully at the testimony today to see if there's anything in this testimony today that we want to add to this list, and I think there is.
Yes.
But we certainly want to look at that carefully.
Okay, well, let me tweak it a little bit, and then let me get a draft out, and then obviously, I think it's obviously important that we turn this around as
Well,
quickly as
that's what I was
Yes.
going to say. I really hope, so when, Kevin sends this out to us, I would like to see if we could move this forward this week, to the committee and the members that need to receive this, and really get this process underway
And
as quickly as possible.
the letter, I thought who would be copied on it would be our entire Montgomery County delegation in Annapolis, because some of that delegation sits on this committee, as well as the county executive and the county council members. Is there anyone else that should be copied on this letter?
Well, I know Margaret had mentioned the chairs of our delegation, but in fact, if we're going to send it to the entire delegation, that takes care of it.
Well, we don't have to send it to the entire delegation.
Well, no,
but
certainly this is an
won't hurt.
issue. It's received attention. We've heard from elected officials as well.
And it
you know.
affects every jurisdiction and every individual that resides in those jurisdictions.
Do they then form a poll, an action plan, and then submit it to us? What's the process after they get the letter?
They can then authorize the legislative auditor's office to begin a comprehensive review of the issues raised.
But do we get a copy of what they're going to review before they start? So we say, yes, that's the way we want to go, or no, that's
Well,
not the way?
You raise a good point. I mean, I've been involved in government audits in a former life, and generally they have a sit-down meeting to begin, an entry meeting to discuss the the audit itself and what they're going to be looking at, what we want them looking at, etc. And because not everything is going to be spelled in detail in this letter, I mean, but hopefully it gives them an overview of what we're talking about, and then we can look at specifics. So,
Why don't I tweak the letter to say that if the committee agrees that an audit should take place, the board would like the opportunity to meet with whoever it is. I mean, I'm sure the legislative auditor, he's got 5 divisions underneath him, so he may not be the one doing the audit himself, but whoever will be undertaking the audit, that the board would like the opportunity to meet with that individual to explain in detail, further detail, the concerns that the board has.
Oh, do you think I'm sure everybody else does, there's several people on these committees that I have a passing acquaintance with, and I wondered about the help of calling some of the committee members and telling them we're going to do this, or is that usurping the chairman's prerogatives?
I think Mary Ann knows the chairperson, so I'd start there.
Senator Roosevelt, as a follow-up, once we get the letter out to,
We sent it, we're just following up, making sure, if there are any questions you have or any additional information.
the other issue, which Denise has mentioned, is the state certainly should be informed that we're pursuing this.
Oh, yeah, the board and Ms. Lamone are being copied.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement we're going to move this as expeditiously as
Yes.
possible, and hopefully get things started by the end of the week. Anything else, Kevin, on
No.
your report? Okay, so the next issue then is old business. And was there anything from previous meetings that you that you recall that you want to go into?
I'm still seeing ballots in my brain, so I can't recall.
Otherwise, we'll.
I love that. Old business and other old business.
Other old business, I know. Old business.
Yeah.
The next issue is the follow-up from the gubernatorial general election.
Madam President, Jackie Phillips gave me changes, gave me her route maps and for the recommended changes. And
Oh, she's such a goody two-shoes.
Oh, yeah, I try.
If you could bring them in December, that would be
So,
Yeah. we can do it in
rather
December.
than just talking through it, it would be easier, I'm sure, for you to have a list. Maybe if we can send it to you
That'd be good.
prior to, with enough time that you could prepare, and we could all take a look at what we observed and issues that we found at the polling places that we went to.
Okay.
That's great. The attorney's observations.
Well, I was going to do the same thing. First of all, as you know, I'm here on election day, and both the Brown campaign and the Hogan campaign were represented by counsel, and both commented that they had participated in years past, and this was a very quiet election in terms of issues that were being raised, and so I was pleased that at least it seemed like the number of issues or calls they were getting was less than they had in years past. I have a list of just some minor electioneering issues and some other issues that need to be addressed, but I'll just dictate a memo to Margaret on all those and have them for the December meeting as well.
Okay. Perfect. Election night tabulation.
Okay, Madam President, I do have a memorandum in the packet that walks through the election night reporting, starting with step 1, accumulating and reporting results from early voting. Beginning approximately 1:15 on election day, the bipartisan teams of election judges begin the process of accumulating results from the 153 units that we deployed to our various early voting sites. That process of uploading those election results ended about 6:45 p.m., where then the next step is where we reconcile the number of people that have checked in on the poll book to the number of votes cast, make sure that they are solid numbers. And we did transmit them to the state board on a timely basis, and they were promptly placed on our website at 8 p.m. Then at the polling place on election day, the instructions from the state are very clear that after all the voters have cast their ballots and cleared the room, the chief judge and the assistant chief judge closer begins closing down the voting equipment, printing 2 copies of the voting results from each machine. The first one is printed on the single tape from the morning, which shows the 0 votes cast, and is returned to the Board of Elections as part of our verification process. The second tape is posted in a public area, such as a window on the outside of the polling room. These results are at the precinct, but would require an investment of time and personnel. In the past, campaigns and political parties have gathered this information from these printouts to report back to their various campaign headquarters. After the verification tapes for each voting unit are printed, the chief judge and assistant chief judge then follow the process of accumulating the unofficial results to a single unit, from which a complete tape of all the results for the precinct is printed. 2 copies of this tape is also printed, and 1 is placed in a public viewing area, and then 1 is also returned here at the Board of Elections for verification. The voting unit where results are accumulated for nearly every precinct is loaded with a modem card to transmit the official results via modem to the Board of Elections. Election judges are instructed and trained to transmit the results via modem designed, designated on a analog telephone line or fax line, maybe at this public school. The board has 32 modem lines for accepting transmission of election results from 228 voting locations. But not all polling places are able to transmit. Private locations, generally speaking, churches, synagogues, are not, don't have those capabilities, but all the public schools, public buildings generally do. The judges make 3 attempts to modem the results. If they continue to receive a busy signal or an error message after the 3rd attempt, they are to cease attempting to transmit results and drive them back. Staff tested the modems twice prior to the election. This election, the reason they were twice is because we lost all of our phone service for a portion of one day. After it was restored, we needed to confirm that the modems were functioning. The IT staff and the DTS communications staff visited numerous locations, from schools, other public buildings. We went to Leisure World, all 3 sites. In each instance, the modem transmissions functioned. The DTS communications staff tested the lines the night of the election, prior to 8 p.m. and then again at 8 p.m. to confirm functionality. On November 4th, the first transmission received by the board was from the Damascus Library at 8:40 p.m. The location has 2 voting units.
Can we stop there? Because this is the issue that just drives me crazy. As I sit here election night till whatever time, and I know you're here beyond me, but I don't understand with the number of precincts that have the facility to modem, and the fact that we have 32 modem lines to accept these, why we get such a small number. What was the total number of modem
Well,
that we got in
11
here?
o'clock, 110 precincts had modemed in. At 11:20, for the 11:20 results, 127.
These are modem or these are delivered?
The vast majority of those, what we consider early results, that before 11:30 are modem results.
So we had 110 precincts that sent in results by modem.
Mm-hmm.
Which is less than half.
Well, you said the vast majority. We don't know.
How,
We don't have we don't have data on how many of the 110 are by modem and how many were driven in.
At 11 o'clock, there's not going to be vast majority of. If you want that kind of data, we'll not be able to get it to you till next month.
I would like to get a breakdown on how many private facilities we have that don't have the capability of sending in their results by modem. And
Okay.
also, what's the time frame that they can send the results in? Is it after they completely close down the precinct, or can they do it as part of the closing process?
I think once they remove those cards, right?
They have to run the tapes.
I understand
Yeah.
that.
And they have to accumulate the results. And then they can transmit the results.
But are they doing that? Because from listening to the person that just did the public comment, he spent 4 hours after, from the close of polling, before they got their results in. So,
Janet, would you like to comment on the training that we tell the judges? Janet Ross? Janet Ross is the IT manager for the Board of Elections.
We train the closing judges to close down the units. We tell them to do it in pairs, like pair up, and the chief judge should pair up so it doesn't take as long. And you do it as an assembly line to get it done quick. And then you take every card, you have to take every card out and take it to the zero machine and read it in and accumulate. After that, you print the tapes. And as soon as that's done, you try to modem.
How long would it take you?
To close down the site?
Right.
20 minutes.
Well,
25 at the most.
But can I just be, you have precincts and you have precincts. You have a precinct with 2 machines, the Damascus, so obviously you're gonna get, okay, and then you have precincts like, you know, Wheaton High School or Wooten High School, and where you have how many, you know, how many machines, like you some of them you even have
18 to
like
20.
18 to 20, right? So it's not gonna take you 20 minutes to close down in 18.
I've closed down Powell Junior High in 25 minutes myself.
Yes, but you're an
Okay,
expert.
that's you.
That's you. Because we had quite a few new judges.
That's
this-
the
this
issue.
election
The
around.
judges, the chief judges, they're not sure, and sometimes they hold up the closers because they're not sure, so they don't want the closers to proceed until they check everything. So sometimes it's just communication between the chiefs and the closers. You have the voting ops judges constantly asking the chief, can we go, and that slows down the process. So it's a lot of things going on in the precinct.
But before you post the final results, don't you have to match also any of the back?
You're doing, the
receipts
voting
or-
ops are doing that.
Okay, because I think there's confusion about
Yes.
that, okay?
Yeah.
Because from having worked like helping at, which were, there was so many of them, it was Waters Landing. They felt that they could not send in the results until they had all the back receipts
No.
counted, and that it had to match the magical number for all the machines. So you have that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work to count all those and to make sure, because you have you. If I can may I finish, but you have a lot of room for human error when you're doing that, because you have people there from 6 a.m. in the morning. You have some of them closing judge. In the precinct where I was, one of the closing judges, the Republican closing judge, never showed up. So you had the Republican judge that was there all day
Having the help.
having to do the whole, okay? So stuff like that happens, okay? So I think there needs to be clarity exactly when you're closing, because they felt at these precincts, I don't know what was your experience or other people's experience, they felt that everything, like when you do a cash register, like when I worked at Sears, and at the end of the night you register, if it was $20 off, either you put the 20 in or you did it again. They felt that it had to come to a zero balance where everything had to match, and
It does.
before you post.
I mean, that is
Before-
part of the process. Now, there are tips that we provide
Okay,
to
Jared just
tell
said it
them
doesn't, so I'm confused.
But for our purposes, for you to get the certification, you can't have 20 more voters than you have votes on the voting units. You can't have 40 more votes than you have people signed in. So we give them tips that say you should, throughout the day, count out your back cards and put them in piles of 25. Now, you know, Janet's right. Do we absolutely force them to do it to the penny or to the voter? No. But it should be close. If they're off by 20 voters, that's
If they're off by 4, by 5, like what's in your training?
But
What do you
in
tell
their
the
four-
judges?
Well, we tell them that they should be monitoring it day long. You should be looking at the vote counts on your voting unit, and it should be matching the number of VACs in that unit. Because to have a legitimate election, that's what all this auditing is about, to make sure that the number of voters equals the number of votes cast.
You had instances when this case was not, because they had, when the person actually went to vote, one of the card, whatever, the card wasn't working, and then the judge reissue another receipt. So
They're supposed to log that
No,
into
I
the
know
chief
they're
log.
supposed to, but there are instances where there's a lot of room for those numbers not to perfectly match. So
No,
my
but
question
When you
was,
reissue, the poll
We-
book adjusts it automatically.
but then you have 2 back sheets going into the envelope.
No, one they're supposed to keep.
No, I know, but in a lot of instances, like when I was there and I watched her
They
put
did.
both of them in,
And that's what
because-
caused their mismatch. They were doing it incorrectly.
Isn't
But
it-
when we're closing, they're supposed to count the backs. But that's independent of closing down the machines, because you can't change the votes on the machines. What is on the machine is on the machine. So you're going to go ahead and do that process. If your VACs are not matching, first of all, Margaret's right. We tell them during the day, count them in batches of 25, like every 2 hours or so, and make sure you're matching. But also at the end of the night, you'll find that they're in the wrong machine. I was going to machine 7, wrote machine 7, but ended up taking the guide to 5. And I put it in the wrong machine or wrote the wrong number, so they get mixed up. So you kind of do like a swap at the table. This really belongs to you, this belongs to you, and you normally balance that way. But that should be independent of them closing down the voting units. They should not have waited for the voting units.
So they can modem in that vote.
Right,
Yes,
because you
without-
can't change the machines.
That's not happening.
No,
That's-
it's not.
I've been in a number of precincts when they closed, and that's not what happens.
Right, they're trying to match everything up, and they should be
Right.
doing the VAC matching as a separate process. Like I said, you can't change what's on the machine. You're going to have to modem what's there.
Is the new process going to be the same way? Are we going to have to do the same general closing with the new process?
It doesn't make any difference. It's paper, the touchscreen, lever. You need any place in the United States, you need to have the number of votes equal the number of voters.
I get that. What I'm saying is getting there to modem it in is going to be about the same kind of process with the new machines.
Well, first of all, the conclusion of this particular report says, first of all, we need to confirm that the new system does allow for us to modem results from the polling place. Okay? There's no confirmation, and I've sent an email to the project manager of the voting system saying, is this going to be, because quite honestly, there's only a couple of counties that do it. And the state makes a decision on statewide decisions. Secondly, one of the things that we can do is install more phone lines, more modem lines. Instead of 32, we can have 64 modem lines. We can send, in the past, the Department of Technology Services did go to the polling places and supported our election judges. We are going to recommend that with the new voting system, that, and if we are allowed to modem the results, that the county tech staff support the election judges at the precinct to make sure that we can modem these results in on a timely basis or by 11 o'clock. Finally, we could do something what Baltimore County does, and that is establish several satellite locations where the election judges bring their supplies and technology staff. We establish modem there so that they can modem the results to our office. These are 3 options that we're looking at. But again, number 1, make sure that the new system does permit modeming, otherwise we'll be driving everything in. Number 2, we need to have the county give us the financial resources or the technical and personnel resources to support the election judges in the polling place so that they can transmit these results.
Is that a reality that the county might lend us enough?
No.
I mean, is that a real thing?
Well, I think that once we have this new voting system and we have greater specifics, that one of the things that we will be doing, because obviously you are going to be discussing our budget for the future in executive session. One of the things that we will be discussing with the Office of Management and Budget is our concerns about the funding levels for our department in light of a new voting system.
I think from my observations, something that we can do is the sequencing of closing. Redefine that. And I think it would help because from what I've observed, they do everything before they close the machines down. And that's what I've seen in not just one place, but they do everything. The closing of the machines is the last thing that they do before getting out of there.
And that's not what they're trained to do. They're trained to do
David
it first.
has been patiently waiting, raising his hand.
Unusually so. Yes.
a couple of questions. Have we considered as an alternative, it sounds like part of the issue may be the need for technological knowledge, but part of it may just be the need to have people knowledgeable about our processes. And I'm wondering whether our staff can be sent out to polling places to help people with this process so that they do things in the order in which they are trained to do them. And I realize that some of our staff, like some of the roamers, for example, probably are helping with this. But I'm wondering whether we have additional staff that we can.
But we don't have 250 people.
No, I'm not suggesting it's in every precinct. I'm just saying that for some people, what's holding them up may be simply a lack of certainty about what they're supposed to do next. And if there was somebody that they could consult with, it might get them faster. Just a thought. And then one of the questions that I asked via email that I'm not sure I completely get from this memo is what is it that we believe that Baltimore County or Baltimore City or Prince George's County are doing that is resulting in their results getting in that much faster? And I realize that in some cases it's a function of how many machines, how many voters, how many precincts, but in some cases, these are all large jurisdictions, and one would think that they'd be having similar issues to ours, and I'm just wondering if we have a sense as to why it is that theirs are getting in faster than ours.
As I stated, Baltimore County has their IT department. They set up satellite locations, and the judges don't have to drive the distance. Baltimore City sends a police officer there. They come and get the PC memory cards, and they go. The police officers there, PC memory cards and the provisional ballots are picked up, and they go to election headquarters.
Okay, how about Prince George's?
I didn't have a chance to talk to Prince George's County.
I like Baltimore City's satellite because
Baltimore
County satellite process quite a bit, and I think something that we need to look at in the future, because you have people like Mr. Fiddler who are all the way down in Bethesda, who had to come all the way up to Up County. When I was a judge in Damascus and you guys were in Rockville, I had to go all the way from Damascus all the way down to Rockville, and that was a way too. Like, you literally had to take your breakfast with you so you could have it while you waited.
Yes.
But we really need to look at.
Mr. Subin had his hand up, and I think he wanted to add something to the discussion.
Yes, I can get you halfway there. Mr. Firestein has already asked that question, and I'll be briefing Mr. Leggett when he gets back in the country next week on the elections and the process and what happened. And so if there's some way to get the cost to me of the, 22 additional modems, I can at least give it to them. They're at the beginning of working on the budget and the marks for fiscal 16. So,
how about the technical services personnel?
And how about our scanners?
Well,
give me your wish list, and I'll pass it on, and what priority order of which
we're going
pieces
to
of
be
that.
because this is in the future budget, we're going to be discussing this in executive session following this, because we can't publicly discuss the new budget.
Understand. Whatever you give me.
What we may want to do is provide Mr. Subin a copy of the memo that you're planning to send to Mr. Leggett so that he has it in advance.
It's a good idea.
It's like he has said privately and publicly, it was before I went to the council on the right to vote task force, access. Those were his 3 top priorities. So he has major interest in elections and how they proceed.
That's great, but you need a strong budget to be able to do
Well,
that.
I understand that, but remember there are a lot of competing interests. So as
and this is
OMB
people-
goes through, and that's why I need a priority list of which pieces you want done first, so he knows.
Is the county government able to help us in terms of estimating the cost of the various options? Because, for example, if Montgomery County were to provide police officers to do what Baltimore City does, I'm sure there's a cost attached to that, but there's no way that we'd know what that is.
Right. Or to provide IT satellites with their IT
Well,
department.
The satellites certainly should not be a problem, and if you
Well, they're
need
going to require
less
security at each
PT
location.
Well,
In other
you're
words-
dealing with less locations, and if they're going to the satellite sites, then you're only talking 5 or 6 police officers to do that, and they might be able to use those who are on duty already. Whoever has that beat picks them up
In the different districts.
and drives them in, so there'd be no cost to that. The personnel cost, again, if we know how many people you need, then it's not difficult to go back in and figure out those costs. But again, how many people will you need? That's going to drive that number.
Well, and there's a lot of unanswered questions regarding the new system and how that's going to impact this. For example, you're not going to have 18 or 20 voting units in a place now. We're talking about 1 or 2 scanning devices, which is where the votes are going to come out of, right?
No, I think you need to look at this.
Oh.
Oh,
okay.
They're gonna put the ballot into a voting unit, just like we have.
It's a touchscreen
Or similar.
and paper.
It's like a third page.
Yep. Look on page
Page
12.
3 parts, yeah.
Yep.
3 parts to it now.
Three
Just a
parts.
touchscreen plus a paper that you.
It's gonna be just as bad.
And the
So do you
touchscreen
have to
scan.
do paper and touchscreen, or is it either or?
No, it's both.
You're
And
required
then
to
you have
Put
to
the
scan
paper
it.
into the touch screen.
So,
Put the paper in,
so
and you can vote it
can
by
we
touch
assume
or
that
by
we're gonna
pencil.
need additional personnel for this new election?
Yeah, we already told the county that we need additional.
Yes, well, we have addressed
Okay.
the personnel issue, but yeah.
But I think, Mike, the message is that this is a partnership for the residents of Montgomery County to do this without having nice people like Mr. Sidler be out of his element till 1:30 and I trying to return our results. And it can be done. It really can be done. We have resources in this county. We have police resources, IT resources. And with this new voting system, it's quite obvious that we're going to need additional personnel. So it's there. We know what's coming.
I don't think that the county executive would argue with anybody about the partnership. His interest in voting, the ability of people to vote, and the integrity of the process is very strong. There's no question. I've spoken to Mr. Firestein about the issues, about the fact that there will be additional costs, but we don't know how much the state system, the new system's going to cost. We don't know what, consequently, the county share of that is going to be. We're at the very beginning of the process. The marks have come out. All the responses have not come in. There'll be a process with the executive and the director of the Office of Management and Budget and the department heads. And the departments will have the chance to say, here's why this mark is insufficient for what we are going to need. here are the consequences if we don't get that additional money.
Well,
So I've been able to go to Mr. Firestein and Mr. Leggett and pretty much get what you need if or when we have all the information. I can tell you right now, Mr. Firestein and the director of OMB are not going to put in a number just to put in a number. What's behind that number is going to be the big issue. But again, we're at the beginning of the process, and I certainly am willing to take your issues back and say, here they are, and
Well-
here are the priorities.
I guess one of the things that would be helpful, Mike, is that when the board has this opportunity to talk with Mr. Leggett, instead of being given a 5-minute block of time, we could be given either a separate meeting or a longer period of time if there's a huge disagreement.
I think that under the circumstances, that additional time is certainly warranted.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. We're normally considered one of the small agencies or whatnot, and, we're in and out of there in, 10 minutes. But, yeah, this is a whole new world, and I think we need to be put on a different schedule for that meeting.
I would say that, from my experience on the council, that in relative terms, the additional monies are marginal. The situation and the additional money that will be needed is going to be far more than marginal this year. I don't think there's any way to get around that. I don't think under the circumstances there's any question. But again, Mr. Leggett's got a lot of pieces of the budget on his plate and is not going to know all of the circumstances affecting all of the departments and agencies. But as you know, Mr. Leggett is very open to listening. Now, given his style of making decisions, and this is not a criticism, I wouldn't expect to walk out of the room with an answer. He takes things and takes all the information, and before he's going to give an answer, he thinks about it. And he puts a lot of thought.
Well, he
into
should,
it.
and he might want some follow-up from us, but we'd love to have a really good discussion with him on it, so that's perfect.
Yeah, again, under the circumstances and given his interest in voting in elections, I can't imagine he won't be willing to do that.
Great.
And again,
Thank you
that's
for your help.
his, everybody has their own style of making decisions. That's his. And it's just to say, I don't think you're going to walk, nobody that I know of walks out of the room knowing the answer. He puts a lot of thought in everything.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I agree with that.
Great. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you for
Thank you,
your
Mike.
help
Thank
with
you.
this, Mike.
Thank you.
I lost the agenda. I think that that's it for election night tabulation. New business, future meetings.
The only thing I do at the end of every year, we want to move forward with the third Monday of every month for next calendar year as well.
I
Seems
think
to be
everybody
working okay
has
for
pretty much
everybody.
had that in their mind
Okay.
for the past 3 years.
So the December agenda, we will have all of the dates for calendar year.
For next year.
It may
15
not
on.
work for January and February. with the
Well, that's
holidays.
true. They won't work for January and February, but
Yeah,
That's standard.
holidays change around a
But
bit.
I'll have that list for next month.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the next, the November 25th, what is that, that I'm looking at?
Oh, that's,
But we're certifying today, right, following the meeting?
and it says or earlier to be determined. It was, everything, this was done in advance, so we weren't
Okay,
sure when we
so-
were gonna be ready for
So
that.
it's not, okay.
November
So then the next meeting is scheduled for Monday, December 15th.
Right.
And we will be proceeding with that. So do we next convene as the Board of Canvassers?
Yes.
Because we have some.
Oh, some late ballots, all right. Do we need a motion to do that,
Yes.
please?
I move we go to the Board of Canvas for review of the late.
I second Naheed's motion.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I take it these were all, keep in mind that absentee ballots had to be in by 10 o'clock last Friday. I take it all these came in after 10 o'clock.
You're saying that something came in on Friday later in the day?
So it really doesn't matter when they're postmarked,
At this point, no.
they had to physically be here.
What's the date on Friday?
Friday was the 14th.
14. These all came in this morning.
So what we have to do is vote not to accept them.
Correct.
You've got a little stamp.
No, we'll have to just write.
Okay.
Rejected.
You want us to initial it?
Or
No,
actually,
let's-
if you just
let's
want to
pass
give
it
the
around.
motion.
As a motion?
And there, how many of these? 3?
There are 4.
Four.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Just initially pass
So
it
is there a motion to reject the
around. No, but let's see.
ballots that came in?
No,
late?
everybody has to see.
Excuse me?
Everybody has to see and then you make the motion. I mean, she has to see. You wanna see?
I'll accept the board's, looking at them.
There's nothing really to see. I mean, they came in today.
Came
Well,
from Salvador.
they're each state.
I know, it's
Yeah.
not too bad.
With today's date.
They were all received today. They're stamped for today. Is there a motion to?
I move we reject all of them, 4.
Because they were here after.
Yes, they were late.
Received
Official
after
date.
the deadline. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I now need a motion to go into executive session.
I move.
Motion to adjourn the canvas board.
I
Oh,
move to
adjourn the canvas
Yeah.
board first.
Yeah.
Need a motion.
There's
I
so many.
move we adjourn
Oh,
the
I was, okay.
Congress board.
I'll second.
In favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, and then I move to move our meeting to executive
Session.
session. Someone needs to second it.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.